this Caddo Parish Commission work session meeting of April the 18th to order, please. Roll call, Mr. Cook.
Mr. Donnelly? Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Lynn?
Present.
Mr. Bowman?
Present.
Mr. Baker? Ms. Lynch? Mr. Escaday?
Here.
Mr. Thibodeau?
Here.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Epperson?
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Okay. I would like to ask ROTC former captain, Commissioner, former City Council person, Ms. Joyce Bowman, to lead us in the invitation, please.
What's that?
From the mighty Bethune-Cookers.
There you go. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come now, bowed heads, grateful hearts, so thankful, so grateful for all of our many blessings. I pray your blessings now upon each person assembled here today and their families. I want to thank you now for your son Jesus who died on the cross for our sins. Heavenly Father, bless the entire parish of Caddo and all of our departments. It is in the name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
At this time, we'll have the posting of the colors prior to the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Sergeant Major Jeremy Scott, and in the Huntington High School Color Guard, Sergeant First Class Cedric Gray is led by Sergeant Major Jeremy Scott, Corporal Colton Kelly, and Master Sergeant Tyler Palmer. Now we have the posting of the colors by the Huntington High School ROTC and the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by them after the colors are posted.
Let's the intent. Carry color. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right,
Right face. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order arms. Post colors. Right face. Forward march.
left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right.
You may be seated. Once again, we'd like to thank the Huntington High School ROTC that was led by Sergeant First Class Cedric Gray for posting the colors and giving us the Pledge of Allegiance today. At this time, if there are any individuals in the audience that would like to address the commission, please go to the foyer, fill out a card. I'm sorry. I skipped an item. Are there any agenda additions? Any agenda additions? Okay, if not, if there are any citizens here that would like to address the commission, please go to the foyer, fill out a card, and you may submit it to the commission clerk, and at that time you will be recognized to do so. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Next we have visitors. First on here we have Veteran Robert Stewart.
Okay. Mr. Robert Stewart, would you come forward, please, sir, to the podium? Go to the podium, right to the mic, Robert. As you all know, in Caddo Parish this month, we are celebrating Parish Government Month, and we are following the theme of our national organization, National Association of County Officials, where we recognize our veterans, their families, and the active military personnel. Today, we'd like to recognize Mr. Robert E. Stewart. Mr. Stewart is a United States Navy veteran of World War II, and he was attached to the Marines. He was in service from January of 1945 until January of 1947. He served in the Pacific, and he was on the USS Haven. He was a pharmacist mate, 3rd class. He's a member of the American Legion Post 14, where he's a past commander. He also chaired the Shreveport-Bossier Veterans Memorial Steering Committee that we have up on Clyde Fant Parkway, and he still chairs that committee to this day. He was also a participant in the Medal of Honor Recipients Convention that was held in Shreveport a few years back. He's been very active with veteran items, and we are most appreciative for the services that Mr. Stewart has rendered. He also, under his leadership at the American Legion Post and other veterans organizations, he helped us to acquire the Northwest Louisiana State Veterans Home in Bossier City, and also helped, he was a good person in helping us to advocate in behalf of our Northwest Louisiana Veterans Cemetery that's located in Spring Lake. So at this time, we would like to thank Mr. Stewart for his service, and he's continuing to serve. And let us all stand and give him a big round of applause. Appreciate it. At this time, Mr. Stewart, if you'd like to say some words.
First of all, I want to tell each of you how much I appreciate the opportunity of being here today and being recognized. The second thing I think that it would be good to bring up today is tell you how that Veterans Memorial got started down on Fant Parkway. It came to me one day that Shreveport, Louisiana, at this time, I think, was the 2nd largest city in the state. And here we are without a memorial. So the idea came about, we need to have a Veterans Memorial in Shreveport, Louisiana. And that's the way it got started. And I said, well, what's the best way to go about getting it started? This was the easiest part. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are, and you'll get it done.
Thank you. We'd like to also recognize Mr. Dennis England, the current post commander of American Legion Post 14. Thank you for being here today, Dennis. Okay. Next item, please, Mr. Clark.
We have Dr. Gary Joyner and Mr. Ernie Robertson to discuss the issues relative to redistricting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Good afternoon, members, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you. I know you're in the middle of redistricting. The Caddo Parish Board of Election Supervisors is composed of the Caddo Parish Clerk, the Caddo Parish Registrar, one member appointed by the Governor, who's Al Hennigan, another member who represents the Republican Party is Creighton Light, and then another member who represents the Democratic Party, Lillian Priest, and they're charged with the responsibility of conducting the elections, making sure the commissioners are drawn, and the conduct of the elections at the polls, as well as counting all of the paper absentee ballots. So this group every few years gets together and takes a look at the precincts to see if there's some recommendation we can bring to you. And in that regard, we sent you a recommendation on what we call AB precincts, as well as precincts that possibly could be split during the reapportionment redistricting process. I don't know if I think you have a copy of it, but the precincts that we've taken a look at with the ABs are the ones that basically, so you'll know in AB precincts are just precincts that are split alphabetically. The people who are in the A precincts, last names start A through K, and the people in the B precincts, last names start with L through Z. They normally, as the way things have been, about 1,500 voters in a precinct. The commission would split the precinct to an AB. That was the process prior to the state changing the law where you now have to draw lines on them. So it was a good way to go about facilitating a little bit quicker voting at the polls. However, some of those precincts really didn't grow much past that original cut line. Some of them did. Most of the interior precincts, and we've taken a look at all of the AB precincts, most of the interior precincts are relatively I'm not going to say small precincts, but Caddo averages about 1,100 voters in a precinct. These precincts, if you combine them, will be somewhere, as you can see, in the 1,600 voter range. However, the turnout in those precincts, which we've listed for you in 2006, 2007, 2008, 2010, show that the turnout normally is not going to be much more than 45 to 50%. Of course, in the presidential election, you expect more people to go vote. So therefore, in looking at these precincts, the board took a look at, is it possible for us to reduce those back to single precinct status, save one set of commissioners, possibly free up a machine, because we do have some wing precincts that I'll talk about in a minute that might need another machine. So that's some recommendations to you. They're strictly recommendations. If you can take care of them during reapportionment, that's fine. If you have to wait till somewhere down the road, or if you don't take care of them. But it's one of those things that, since we deal kind of with the internal part of an election, it's a way that you might be able to deal with some of those precincts. You can see it's 13AB, 22AB, which, by the way, 22AB was at Piermont Mall. Piermont Mall is no longer going to be a precinct for us this fall. And so I've already talked with Mike and Keith and your staff, and they're looking for some other locations, because we actually have 4 precincts there. 25AB, 30AB, 34AB, 45AB, 51AB, 73AB, and 94AB. And all the information about those precincts are listed for you. So that's possible with the ABs to reduce those back down to just single precinct status. The other precincts, however, are a little bit more involved, because those are precincts that are just large precincts. The growth area, of course, of Caddo has been in the ring area of Shreveport, and these precincts all are 1,900 voters or more. The maximum that you can have in a precinct, according to state law, is 2,200 voters. We do have one precinct in Mr. Thibodeau's district, 77, that has more than 2,200 voters. So officially, here's your notice, that one is over 2,200. It needs to be split during redistricting. Whenever you split a precinct like that, you're using an internal cut, and that will create precinct 77, and then the other precinct territory will have another number, like 111 or 112, something in that range. And so it'll essentially be 2 separate precincts that report separately on election night. That one is huge already. It already has some problems attendant to it, mainly due to parking and other issues. There's some other precincts here, 76AB. You can see 2,052 combined voters. Obviously, we expect it to continue to grow. 97AB, LB Road Methodist Church, 2,111 voters. Same story there. 105, which is in Mr. Smith's area, Caddo Fire District 4, Colquitt Road, 1,944 voters. Precinct 133 at Calvary Pentecostal Church, with right at 2,000 voters. That precinct also holds the distinction of being the most complicated precinct in the state of Louisiana. In 2008, when we did the very complicated judicial election cycle with the JPs involved, with the city courts, of course, the city marshal, that precinct had more splits in it than any other precinct in Louisiana. So finding a good split for it in this case will not make that any worse, nor will make things go away, but it will at least make it where it's a little bit different to deal with. Then precinct 159 in Greenwood, with over 2,000 voters, there's another one that might need some attention. I've talked with Dr. Joyner. He's looked at some possible actual physical splits in these precincts, and when I talk about splits, I'm talking about inside the box of the precinct. Some line that hopefully gets us near 50, 50, 60, 40 in voters. Not taking this part of the precinct and putting it with another precinct. That's another world. We don't want to do that, because the legislature has already completed its work. We want to take the whole precincts and possibly do a split in there. Again, if you can't get to any of these this year, except for the 77 that has to be done, you want to wait till next year after reapportionment's over, that's up to you. That's your choice in this particular regard. But it will, somewhere down the road, we need to be looking at these. These are the ones we need to look at. Then just one other quick note in here. The board was also advised by William Priest of the polling places that will not be able to use in the fall due to closing of schools. So I went ahead and put this in the memo too. You can notice in the MLK area, Newton Smith School is going to be closed, so we're going to need to be looking for a place there. The good news is, while Hillsdale School off of Greenwood Road is going to be closed, Praise Temple Church have already offered to take the 2 precincts there, so that's a potential location for those 2 precincts. And then J.S. Clark will be closed for a year. We have 2 precincts there, so we're going to have to be looking for a place for them to go. And then right now, Bethune School will still be allowed to be used for voting, but it will actually be in kind of an administrative center. And she said the gym would be available for voting. 2 other quick notes that I'll advise you of now, and then these are for 2012, but I'd kind of like to get them on at least the back burner. The ward lines for the JPs in Caddo need serious attention. They are invisible lines. Because of that, whenever we run their elections, which are run at the same time as the judicial cycle, they're another set of invisible lines, and they tend to create exceptional problems whenever you're trying to come up with all of the precinct combos and splits. The reason I'm saying this is in 2008, whenever Caddo broke the record that it already held for the most ballot styles in the state, and we have a very short time period. We only have in our office usually 48 to 72 hours to do the final ballot check. And when you're talking about hundreds of splits and combos, it's very difficult to get done. And it took a lot of reprogramming to actually get that election put together. Some of that could be changed if the commission looked at moving redefining the ward lines to visible precinct lines, just like you run on, just like the school board runs on, just like the city council runs on, just like the state house and state senate. And every political jurisdiction runs on visible precinct lines. The only people not running on that are the JPs and constables. That needs to be changed. That would do a lot of good toward simplifying some of the elections in Caddo. The only other choice, and this will not happen, is for them to be running on their own election date, where their complications don't influence the 3 levels of judicial elections, district court, city court, juvenile court, that we're running at the same time, and they have internal splits in precincts as well as the city council, as well as the exterior boundaries of the city. And so I say that to you because that could be addressed in 2012. The other thing I would caution you about are string annexations. And I know that's a peculiar term. We're fixing to have 11 exits, as I understand it, on I-49 in North Caddo. It's very important the commission look at guarding against the possibility of strings being extended, running down the sides of roads to pick up exits, and over here's a municipality, and over here's an exit, and there's a little string saying, well, this is our line of continuousness. Get to the exit so that this is in our town. The reason for that is, whenever you draw one of those lines, you split a precinct. Now, you have the authority to split precincts. You're the sole authority in the parish whenever it comes to any precinct line, not school board. The only thing that municipalities can do is they can annex, but it has to be a contiguous area. So I say that to you because it's going to be an issue. We've already received calls about that. It's very important that possibly that the commission can come up with a very cohesive policy that will deal with avoiding some of the string annexations that may occur. I'm sure Dr. Joyner has something to say. That's enough on my part. I'll leave it with you.
2012 sounds a long way off, but I'll tell you right now, I'm already dealing with it in your redistricting. There is a common way in which the Department of Justice and the Bureau of the Census looks at small towns. If you have a small town and it's a single voting precinct, they simply say this. It is so easy. If it grows, everything around it goes at the detriment to it. So if you have a Blanchard or a Greenwood, and we're going to pick on those because that's my two folks right now, they have done some very innovative annexations. They both have strings. A string, the easiest way I describe it is you have the center line of a road, which is how the feds look at things, and then you take from the center line of the road to the ditches or to the fences, and you shoot out to pick up something. So you've created contiguity, or that contiguousness. The problem is that over the last 10 years, Blanchard, for example, has done its annexations, and it has impacted 4 separate precincts, making portions of 2 of those illegal. So we have to think about, how do we want to deal with this? You as a commission, me as your demographer at the moment, and also in elections with Ernie. If there is a logical plan where we can say, yes, this is great, you go right ahead, do that, that's not going to hurt anything. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, though, is if you create an island. If you have a part of the parish that's completely surrounded by a municipality. Shreveport is famous for it. There's at least 30 in Shreveport. And they've been working very hard over the years to fill some of those holes. But the small towns can do it as well. One of the things that this body's going to be faced with, and some extra cuts that we're talking about, is that to remedy some of these precinct issues, I may have to make cuts. And we're already talking about one at Greenwood. I'm probably going to do one in Blanchard as well, simply because you don't want to leave yourselves open, and this body does not want to leave itself open to a lawsuit simply because of a bit of minutia in geography. We can fix it. At least we can abate it. I don't know if we can fix all of it, but when you're thinking about this for next year, sort of keep that at your forefront, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen quick. It's already happening now, and from my end, we can look at the demographics. We can look at the geography. We can look at the number of people involved. And from Ernie's end, we can look at voters. Remember that I use population and he uses voters because voters are a moving target, and we need something stable when we're doing redistricting. So, have you got any questions for either one of us on this? Or we just stunned you?
Ms. Bowman, you on?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
We always have.
Ms. Bowman?
Okay, my question was basically for Ernie. And when first thing you mentioned that you had copies of whatever you had given us copies. When did you give them to us?
I think it was last week, Thursday or Friday or something.
No. They said they don't have them.
Here, I'll go.
Here you go. Here's some more.
City council got them all.
Okay, and the next one, you mentioned the justice of the peace being separate from other elections. Like, explain that to me.
Well, there's right now the justice of the peace, according to the state election schedule, runs at the same time that you have other judicial elections. They're considered judicial elections. So they'll be running in 2014 in the fall elections at the same time that we're running the 3 sets of judicial elections for the parish, juvenile court, city court, and district court. At the same time, we're also running, of course, the city marshal's race, which runs on the exterior boundaries of the city of Shreveport. The only way that you could possibly make life better would either be to move into whole precincts, or possibly, which won't happen, which is to have a standalone election day maybe in the spring for JPs, but you don't have that authority. That comes under state law. So since we can't run them by themselves, then they have to run with everything else, and they're on the most complicated election portion that we run. It runs every 6 years. Unfortunately, this cycle is the 12-year cycle that occurred in 2002, whenever we also added in, on top of school board, on top of all the other things I've mentioned, the reapportioned city council elections. And so they'll be running this time. They went last time this all coincided was 2002. And last time, based on the number of candidates and all the things that were contested, we had 111 ballot styles that they were able to compute before they really realized there were some problems with the election from our standpoint. And I'm talking about the Secretary of State, because that's who sets up the machines, that's who does programming based on what we send to them. And so it's very, very complicated. You have to have a ballot style, even though you may only have territory in an area. It may not have voters in it yet, but you could, by the time that the book's closed, have a voter there. So you have to have a ballot style for that person to vote on. Because of the invisible nature of the wards, because they're just drawn on section lines and things like that, then you wind up with they're splitting your precincts, they're splitting the judicial districts, they're splitting city council lines, and you'll wind up where you may have two wards in one precinct, as well as, say, precinct 133 down near Greenwood, where you have inside Greenwood, outside Greenwood, inside Shreveport, outside Shreveport, in a ward, out of a ward, in this other ward, in this ward, and then on top of that, you have the JPs who only in Caddo, the JPs have the option, if voters in the city, to have concurrent jurisdiction with city court. So you have voters who can vote on the JP and the city judge, and it may be split between two city judges as well.
Okay, would that be the state's responsibility as far as the actual cost to do a standalone election? How would that come about? If it's done, who's going to pay for it?
I don't think it's going to be done. I'll be honest with you, because it would we'd be the only parish that would do that. Right now, the state is going to probably leave it as it is, and so the only option then is for the commission to look at redefining the ward boundaries. That's really the only option. Taking them off of the invisible precinct lines, putting them on your precinct lines that you are working out the attendant problems with that, because it isn't just going to mesh easily together, but at least it would put them where their lines are similar to your lines, and they would know where their districts are. We have one district that whenever I became registrar, and I asked Cherry before I left, if that's still her memory, the line between the two wards is a phone prefix line.
Really?
And so a phone prefix line. I mean, it's like the voters that have this prefix are in this part of the ward, and the voters are in this part of the ward, and they have two JPs. So if you're north of it, then that's the phone you call. So it needs to be changed. It needs to be at least be brought to what you're running on, what everybody else is running on, and that's the whole point of looking at the ward lines and redefining.
Yeah, we had a committee meeting earlier, and some of that, I think it might be a solution within that whole problem. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Ms. Lynch?
I wanted to give this to Gary. I'm sorry, Gary, this is my latest version. Ernie, voting machines. Do we have enough voting machines? Are our folks going to have to wait in long lines? How is that looking?
Caddo's only allocated 428 voting machines from the state. I don't foresee us getting any more voting machines. There are usually about 408 active voting machines on election day, usually in a major election. 10 machines are generally used there about the clerk is a custodian of them, but we usually use about 10 of them for training, so they're programmed for training. Another 10 of them are held back at the warehouse in case there is a problem and they have to be reprogrammed. So there are about 408 that are actually active on election day, which is one idea behind the AB taking those down to single precinct status, You may be able to free up a voting machine to go to one of the ring precincts. You may not be able to free them up, it just depends. But I don't foresee the state buying any more voting machines anytime soon.
Okay, so that's totally controlled by them.
Yes, it's up to the Secretary of State to put in, if the state would buy more voting machines. I don't foresee them doing that.
Thank you.
Yes, good day.
It doesn't matter which one. What are the primary reasons for these string annexations? Really?
You always love these great questions.
Really, I mean, I know, but...
Yeah, I know too. Okay. The theory behind them is that you can go out and cherry pick somebody that wants to come in without having to bring in all the landowners on either side of a road. And this is not the only parish that does it. DeSoto Parish right now, the town of Stonewall, is thinking about doing that all the way from Stonewall on US 171 to I-49. Just simply going down the right of way of the road to pick it up.
Primarily for sales tax revenue and law enforcement revenue, so to speak?
Has implications in it, without a doubt. It also excludes the implications.
I knew you wasn't going to get a straight answer. Any practical reason for this to be done outside of those considerations?
Sure. You can, this is theoretical and has nothing to do with any particular place. How's that for a disclaimer?
That's good.
You can go out and you can find somebody that has really nice, or a set of people have really nice homes and will have a really nice high tax base. Go out and get them and then exclude folks who do not have that height, that lofty height of the ability to pay those taxes. It is really, the Department of Justice in the past has looked at it as economic discrimination.
Well, but it's not spot annexation because they're going continuously to that destination, correct?
There are no islands, thus there's a tether.
That's right. Isn't spot annexation prohibited now?
It's not a good thing to do.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. I would suggest that the proper committee go ahead and start dealing with this issue as soon as possible. It's going to take some time to get through the issue of string annexation. And as well as I'd like to request that legal start looking into what our options are, the possibility of prohibiting the practice in the parish. And if that's not possible, then certainly prohibiting the practice in the parish if it splits a precinct along those kind of lines. So we'd do that. Thank you, Gary.
That will help. Another thing, just to add on to what Ernie had said, when we talk about JPs and constables and wards, they pretty much know where the wards are. Well, Caddo Parish, the city of Shreveport ran into an issue in the mid-90s in which the Shreveport City Court, its empowering legislation says Ward 4. Ward 4 has been Shreveport since there's been a parish and Shreveport's been around. So we're looking at 1830s, really, for the first time you look at it with the census. Well, for one reason or another, and for various complicating issues, the Department of Justice attacked the Shreveport City Court. And they did not allow 310 or 11 previous annexations to the city because they had not all been filed over the years the same way. So they hired me. I started looking at it, and I pulled back every annexation from the beginning. I looked at which ones were legal, which ones, according to the Department of Justice, were not. And then I had to find Ward 4. We're Ward 4 Shreveport, right? No, Ward 4 is not even Shreveport in the current Constitution. We had to go back to 1960 to find a version of it, and Ernie and I ended up going to the Census Bureau in Washington and to the National Archives to look through their maps to determine what the last time a real description was of Ward 4. And although I must admit I thoroughly enjoyed a trip to Washington, as I always do, being able to put that back together was a nightmare. an absolute nightmare. We did negotiations with Department of Justice. They ended up going along with it. But the lesson to be learned here is that ward lines on non-visible lines, not what precincts are, township lines, section lines, or we're better off than other parishes. There's actually a ward line in Union Parish, where I'm from, that the legal description starts at the southwest corner of a lady's truck garden. And the first thing I asked them, this is 30 years ago, I said, what happens if she does another row or two? Is that movable property? They don't know. You can't figure it out. So it's a real issue, and it's going to bite us if we don't take care of it. So please consider that as well. Mr. Johnson?
My question for Ernie. In y'all meeting, did y'all discuss the smaller precincts, like in my district, 130, which typically has about 26 to 30 people vote each time, and merging it with 135, which is at the same precinct?
We looked at that, and it's really, at this time, we just didn't take any action on it. It's going to be one that's up to the commission. I would suggest after you finish with the fall elections, we can take a look at some of the smaller precincts and deal with them at that time.
Okay.
You, sir?
Yes, okay. Thanks.
Dominique?
Mr. Dorner, you're talking about the string annexation, you're talking about going down a municipality, going down a road bed to get to a certain point.
Yes.
I agree.
Typically a road, but it can be a stream.
But state statute allows them to do that.
It does allow them to do
Okay, and, you know, I know several of the municipalities have done it in northern part of Parish, and so that does have to do with the, I guess, the sales tax or the proposed tax, the growth of the city. But also, if you're on low roads, you're looking at land, water, and sewer and utilities, which will help a town grow. It's going to help the parish grow. So, those are issues that we've got to look at carefully, not to step on a municipality's right to annex something. So that they can provide something to utility or service to some of these individuals that don't have them.
You're absolutely right.
I-39 has obviously increased that issue, but it's my understanding that there's not going to be any annexation toward I-49 until it's completed at this point, because the state is not going to approve annexation of a road until the I-49 is completed.
It's not even on the federal maps. The anticipated course is, even that ribbon of concrete that's been laid is. But the main thing that I'm concerned about it is, I'm certainly not anti-growth at all. I want to make sure that when growth occurs, that it can be managed. From your standpoint, let's say that you have a town, mythical town, and it's 4 or 5 miles away from I-49, and they want to do what Stonewall's talking about doing. They want to just shoot straight out, get it, secure all 4 corners of an exit.
Right.
Okay. But let's say
they're going to have someone sign off. They're going to have the property owner sign off.
They will have to have property owners sign off, and it may not be a bad idea to have the commission sign off for one thing, and that is voting precincts. Let's say that this mythical problem that extends out 4 or 5 miles, or even 1 or 2, crosses and severs voting precincts. Okay? Then you have a contiguity problem. As long as it's all in a single district, it's okay. But when it crosses districts, judicial, commission, whatever it is, senatorial, representative, and this town remains a single precinct, then you're going to have to look at having some type of answer between, say, the north half and the south half of the precinct. A big rule, and it's cut right in the middle. Are you already going to have a rural precinct that has relatively few voters? The state says you can't have one less than 300 voters. And we've got a lot of farmland in the north, as you know, and so we're going to have some precincts that will have clusters of population that may not be contiguous to the rest of the land. We need to just be able to look very closely and see, is there a solution? A solution might be combining part of that precinct with an adjacent precinct, not killing any numbers, but just handling it that way. We just need to know how, the commission needs to have some concept of direction of what it should do for smart growth.
I understand what you're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Gary and Ernie. We appreciate you, and we'll be getting in contact with you. Mr. Pearson, we got to work you as soon as you get into that. We'd like to sign this to your committee to start some action on that, okay?
Sure will.
All right. Next order, please, Mr. Clerk.
Next, we move to reports. We have the administration's report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have a few things that we'd like to cover with you all. First, I'd like to have Mr. Kirk Foreman come forward and give you a brief update on the partnerships effort in our area.
I'm not going to refer to those, but that's other backup information. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you as always. Thank you for the time, and we appreciate your support and investment in helping to grow Caddo Parish and North Louisiana. I'll wait a second for the PowerPoint.
Name and address for the record, please.
Sure, absolutely. It's Kurt Foreman. Address, I guess, 400 Edward Street here in Shreveport, 71101. I live in Ms. Baker's district too. So. I wanted to share with you a quick update and also answer any questions. And I've also provided you with a copy of our annual report and our list of investors, and also a flyer that we give out at Rotary clubs and different groups that describes what we do. So that's more for your files or for your staff and that sort of thing if you want to pass it around. The PowerPoint is what I wanted to share with you. Would it be helpful for me to do it here so people can see? Or I can just, do they need to see it? Sorry about that. Usually it's on, so.
I'm feeling him break her stuff.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's not on.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
There we go. There we go. I wanted to give you a little highlights back for 2010 and then a little look forward so you get a sense of 2011. This is what we call our pipeline information. A pipeline for us are all the projects we're working on at any point in time that are looking at the area, that are thinking either existing companies or new companies that may be evaluating North Louisiana or at least one of its communities as a part of its process. They may be looking elsewhere and here, but it's some combination. And it's not just a whisper or a hint, it's actually something that we can define. During 2010, we worked with 78 new projects. There were projects that carried over in from past years. Sometimes I have one project that's been my responsibility that I've been working on since 2006. So there sometimes are very slow projects, but we had 78 new projects we started, and some of those closed, but 78 during 2010, which represented a total, if you aggregate just numerically, a little over 9,000 jobs were related to those projects. We had 16 companies visit the area during the year. Those are not necessarily just the 78, they may have been a prior project, but we had 16 companies that we hosted and visited around. They may have been here for 2 hours, they may have been here for 2 or 3 days. And we had 12 projects that ended up completing successfully during 2010. And the next page is actually those 12 projects. You'll recognize a lot of these. 7 of these, actually, by coincidence, by the company's choice, ended up in Caddo Parish. So more than half our projects during 2010 selected a location within your jurisdiction. The asterisk ones are companies that already had a presence in the region, in North Louisiana, not necessarily just Caddo Parish. So that's often something people don't realize, that we work as much or more often with existing employers as we do with new employers. So these are all ones that you probably recognize. The aggregate projected jobs, both retained and new, which nearly about 95% of those would be considered new, very small number of retained. Almost 1,100 jobs and $150 million worth of projected capital investment. One of our better years, actually, despite the national recession for the region, and comparing to a lot of my colleagues around the country, our numbers were pretty good. This doesn't mean this is all the projects that happened in the region. We only report projects that we had a hand in. So if we supported the parish or we worked with a variety of partners, then it would go on our completions list. Next is our current pipeline, and I thought you might find that we're up a little bit. We have 49 projects we're currently working. Again, these could be spread out over multiple years. The minimum jobs involved is about 4,800. The most would be about 5,800. Again, that's just simply adding up all the numbers given to us by each of the projects. The investment is almost $10 billion. That's a staggering number. We have one project that is extremely capital intensive. That's why the numbers are so high. Normally they would be in the billion or $2 billion range. We have one that's an extremely high capital investment project if it happens. And then the square footage is just, again, the accumulation of all the different sizes of space that people said they need, either to lease or to buy or to build as a part of that. So almost 2.5 million square feet. And then lastly, I just wanted to share with you briefly a few updates, because it's not just about business development. We do 3 main things. One is we get out and tell the story of Caddo Parish in North Louisiana to people both inside the region and outside the region. We continue to spread that word through print ads. We try to get editorial placed in magazines and newspapers, both outside the region and inside the region. You may have started to see we've done a regular column in the Times. We do that in the News Star and a few other community papers in the region, mainly to help spread the word and give people in the community some information that they can use as they tell their friends and family. One of the biggest hurdles we have is when everyone assumes if you're from here and they meet you when you're in Las Vegas or you're in California or you're in Destin or wherever you go, if they meet Mr. Pearson and they find out he's from Shreveport, Louisiana, Caddo Parish, they're going to assume he's an expert on his hometown or his community. So if whatever he says, they're going to believe him. So we spend a lot of time trying to tell our stories to our local residents so they can tell the stories to others. Because it's amazing how much is going on in our communities that we may not even realize is happening. Just because we look at it every day, it's like watching your children grow. All of a sudden they're taller, and when did that happen? But they've grown a little bit every single day. So that's very important. So that's the marketing side. The business development side, which is really what we just talked about, we've seen an uptick in prospect visits. We're very excited. Since about the beginning of December, we've had a noticeable increase in number of prospects visiting the area. I sort of feel like during 2010, we did a lot of math homework for a lot of people. They wanted us to do their homework for them, and now we're starting to see the visits happen. We just had one last week that Mr. Epperson got to visit with the company, and we're continuing to work on those, and we have another one later this week. We've also been on the road. We can't just tell our story locally. We need to tell our story on the road. I've been in St. Louis. We're going to Albuquerque and Chicago in a couple weeks. We're going to Georgia in about 3 weeks, and Mr. Tim Miles from our staff, he and I spent a week in Southern California talking to consultants and companies because of the changes going on in their business climate about the possibilities of moving to Louisiana. So we're always out and about as much as we can. And then lastly, something called workforce marketing, which is probably the least well-known part of what we do, but I think probably in the long run one of the most important. And that is helping companies that are located here or are thinking of locating here to have all the information they need to sell Caddo Parish in North Louisiana to potential employees. That might be someone like the gentleman I met this morning who moved back here after 25 years. His family was from here, but he had lived in South Florida and Georgia and other places. Someone we call a boomerang, someone who grew up here, went away, and came back. Well, what makes that person come back? Is it because mom and dad might be sick? Is it because a great job opportunity opens up exactly in what they do and it's a great time to come home? Or is it a number of things? There's also those folks, perhaps like myself, who had never even been here until I interviewed for the job. And how do you get someone to come accept an interview with a great company here when they may have a misperception about the place? So we create content and information that companies can use to help them sell their own area. And we found that to be very helpful. In fact, one of the most exciting things just happened in the last 2 weeks with that program. We had a meeting last week with 9 technology companies from here in the community that want to work together to sell the different kinds of opportunities for programmers or software developers or all sorts of things to work together to tell that story to people elsewhere and locally, so that they can hire the kind of talent they need to grow these small and emerging companies here in our area. Without that opportunity, they might have to set up an operation in Dallas or New York or Chicago or somewhere to get that talent, and we'd like to see that happen here. So we work very hard on those kinds of issues with our partners. You guys are very active with us. We appreciate that. As I always tell Rotary groups and Kiwanians when I visit with them and stuff, nothing we do is done alone. Just like you all don't do things alone, you do it together. That's the same way we work and the way we're set up. We want to thank Woody for his service to our board over the last couple of years, actually I think almost 4 years, and now Valerie Gunn has joined our board and will be coming to her first board meeting in a few weeks, so we appreciate that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or my contact information, including my cell phone, is in your information there. I'm always willing to take a call or an email and help you anytime I can. We again appreciate your service and service with us and service to the parish.
Good, I don't see any requests, so
Okay.
thank you for coming and appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll do this again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Epson, I just want to remind commissioners that on April the 29th, we had an intergovernment consortium meeting. It will be taking place at the port of Shreveport Bossier, and it starts at 11:30. I did talk to Mr. Eric Lehman today about a possible tour of the facility. This is probably one-of-a-kind lead facility in our area, and if you'd like to get a tour of the facility, please be there at 11 a.m., and they'll take you through the building. Otherwise, the meeting will start at 11:30 on the 29th, the meeting, and the next meeting will be hosted by Caddo Parish. So we have to decide what place we want to hold it at. At this time, I'd like to have Mr. Everett come forward to kind of give you an update on our... You want me to do it? Come on. We have a free clinic coming up pretty soon. Everett, would you also mention that the guys graduate tomorrow as well? Thanks.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. On 30 April, we have our annual rabies clinic sponsored by the Humane Society of the United States. And it'll provide up to 500 free rabies shots to the clinic, to the citizens. And also tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Summer Grove Baptist Church, we have 2 of our officers graduating from the Sheriff's Academy, being post-certified.
People honors, right?
And they'll be definitely getting honors, sir.
Commissioners, last Wednesday, we had a Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee meeting, and what was reported in the meeting last week is that the population at the Caddo Correction Center is going down. It's actually about 1,200. It's the lowest it's been population-wise in the last 3 years. The pretrial detainees usually run about 900. It's down in the 600s now. And my compliments to the judges working hard together. And they're working on what is called a rocket docket. And through that effort, they had helped us tremendously reduce the population. And I did mention the fact that we appreciate that tremendously, but the design capacity at the jail is 1,070, so we would like to strive to get below that. So we have a commitment that they will continue to work towards that endeavor. So the good news is that there's no need to build a new jail. Not that we felt that there was a need for it, but this further goes to show you working together, we can make a difference in what goes on at our Caddo Correction Center.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions of the administration? That's it? Okay, we have Mr. Cox, Ms. Bowman, Mr. Glenn, and Mr. Pearson.
Got a full day, huh? Yeah, dude. I would like to request that Sandy Davis come to a meeting at his convenience.
to address the commission about the upcoming hurricane season and the buildings and the facilities that they have on schedule as far as the ones they're going to use. This is going back to the ag building at the Louisiana State Fairgrounds. I don't want to be caught trying to find a building at the last minute. I understand that their procedures have changed down there. I understand that statewide they've had different building changes, and to this minute, I don't think we've been advised of any changes. So if Sandy could come at his earliest convenience, possibly our next meeting, not this Thursday, but the following.
This work session
Yes.
in May?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, I didn't get the date on the 3 rabies shots.
Saturday, April 30th.
There's only a little thing to hand.
Yeah.
What? April 30th?
April 30th, Saturday from 11 to 2.
Okay.
Get your rabies shot?
Well, if it's free. One other just comment, Woody. I was thinking that you were going to attribute the decrease over at the jail as crime being down. And, I'm glad to know that it's due to the dockets being worked faster, but I was certainly hoping that's what the deal was.
Yeah, it's probably been a combination of several things, but the most obvious one was the effort of the judges to expedite things through the process.
Good to know. Thank you.
That's it, Ms. Bowman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lynn?
Mr. Wilson, what is the average length of time that those 600 pre-trial detainees stay in jail before they actually make it to a courtroom?
It varies, sir, anywhere from maybe a week up to 6 months or more, depending on the inmate and what crimes they're committed, because usually the driver on that. But we wanted to get it as low as possible, actually, but right now it goes from a month to 6 months, and maybe longer. It just depends.
Will you get those statistics for me? Who's been in there the longest without going to court and who gets to get out the quickest?
Okay.
And the percentage of those that plead guilty? Thank you.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes, in addition to that, those comments that Mr. Wilson made, we also talked about, past, what we talk about here in commission meetings. No one knows about how the committee has been working to reduce, the number of pretrial detainees. The public doesn't really know, and I've been a part of several meetings that complained about things like that, and without even knowing. And I think what we need to do, and we talked about that in the meeting, because for the first time that I can remember, and I've been around 2 or 3 days, all these government bodies are meeting together to do, one single thing. The DA, the public defender, the city, the sheriff, who else? The parish. Numbers of people sitting around a table to try and help solve a problem, and I think that's to be commended for this city, parish, and people need to know about it and know that we are doing something about it and it is working. The other thing is that we had talked about having a meeting with Lydia Jackson to try and get, because the indigent defenders play a key role in helping to move those prisoners, those pretrial detainees through. And their funding is getting cut, so they're going to lose people. So as they lose people, then they lose the ability to have self-representation for those people that are incarcerated. So we have committed to having a meeting, trying to set up a meeting with our senator to talk about not cutting that funding or helping us with it or something. We always hear, no money, no money, no money. But here we are actually doing something, to save money and to save taxpayers money. First of all, people need to know about it. Then second of all, we need some help. And so we're certainly going to try to move forward with that. Just thought that it would be good that the commission knew about it. Thanks, Mr. President.
Mr. Dominique?
Commissioner Parish, I just wanted to thank you for serving on that committee. A few years ago, the sheriff had come here and it was looked like a very dire situation. And you're 100% correct that when it was a dire situation, everybody's kind of on everybody, but it looks like there's been a great collaborative effort, and you left out the clerk's office. I do want to mention them. Clerk, DA, everybody that you mentioned that have come together to try to alleviate this problem, and it looks like they're doing a great job, and you guys are doing a good job. We need to get some more attention so the public does know that is happening, and we've said it over and over again that the indigent offender, they're a major problem, and if they get cut, it's going to create a backlog, and we've talked about some issues that we might can step up and help. Hope it didn't come to that, but we do need to stay on Senator Jackson. Hopefully the state can come along to continue to support those efforts, because I've said it over again, if we don't hire one of us local lawyers, usually they have bonded out and we don't have that problem. It's the indigent offender that's getting case-loaded out with people at CCC, and they're the ones that are actually handling the majority of those cases, people at CCC and trying to detain detainees. So I just wanted to thank you, and I think Commissioner Cox has been on that committee. I don't know if he's made all the meetings, but y'all doing a good job.
That's it? That's it. All righty. Mr. Wilson? That's it for you?
That's it.
Okay, next order, please, Mr. Clerk.
Communication committee reports.
Any communication from any commissioner?
I have one.
Okay, we have Mr. Pearson. Anyone else on communicate? Mr. Cox, you going to do when you report on your committee?
I'll do that first.
Okay. Mr. Pearson, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Pearson.
Yes, I attended an awards dinner or luncheon or whatever Thursday, sponsored by the Reach for the Stars mentoring program, which celebrated, all of the mentors of both the children with prisoners and the regular children. And again, they wanted the commission to know how much they appreciate their involvement in that program, and without them, they couldn't have moved as fast as they did. Matter of fact, I was a part of an evaluation from the federal government 2 weeks ago for that program, and the guy who came to do the evaluation, made the same statement that it's good to see that the local, government bodies participate in whatever way they can to make sure that they get this jump started, and just have a plaque that reads, Reach for the Stars Mentoring Program Star Award presented to Caddo Parish Commission for your generous community support of all our programs, April 14, 2011. So, we would like to give this to Woody to put give it to Todd. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other word from the commissioner? Okay, next order, please, Mr. Clerk.
At this time, I have president's report.
Okay, we are approaching the culmination of our parish government month. This Thursday will be our student commissioner for a day. We're asking that the commissioners please have your student commissioner down around between 1 and 1:30 p.m. They take discretion, they carry around the facilities. We have a 2-page talking point that may be instrumental in helping to educate them as to what we do, or just whatever you'd like to do on your own. We have an opportunity, I think we have a committee meeting for Thursday, sit in on a committee meeting. And of course, they will sit in on the commission meeting with us also. Mr. Pearson, do you know if the items that were requested from the
I don't know. They said there would be Todd, did those things come in from Roland?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we have something set up for that. Yes.
Okay.
So they did come in?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
And of course, on April the 30th, you know, at the Jones Nature Park, we'll be having the Boats March in honor of Lance Corporal Dakota Ray Hughes, the Marine that was killed in Afghanistan. Proceeds of this event will go toward the Veterans Transitional Center in conjunction with Volunteers of America. We're asking that you all please come out and support that effort. You can go online to www.caddo.org and you can pull up a registration form as well as directions to the nature park. And also we're asking that all veterans in Caddo Parish go on to www.caddo.org and click on the Veterans Information page and submit your veteran service. We have a web page that's being hosted by the parish for all of our veterans that serve in Caddo Parish. Okay. Ms. Clayton, that's all.
Mr. Everson, if I could have a moment, please. If the commissioners could have their commissioner for the day come here at 1:30, and we'll set up a tour of the courthouse for them.
Okay.
Does that work?
All right.
Well, you gotta get them out of school.
First,
Yeah.
Is there a form that we can give the principals, or like a letter? Because I was asked if we had something in writing.
okay. Tom, could you get that to the principals? The commission can tell you what schools, could you get something to them?
Well, what I need is what the event is, what they will be doing, and if you could email those to me, that'd be great.
We'll fix one up and we'll email to each one of you. Thank you. Okay, next we have now old business. We move to new business. We have ordinance number 5087 to amend the budget of estimate revenues and expenditures for the capital outlay fund for the road treatment program.
Move to first. Motion by Commissioner Escaday, seconded by Commissioner Thibodeau. In the discussion, Ms. Red?
I have a question. Can someone give me what the bid process is on our road treatment program? Because if I'm not mistaken, quite a number of years since I've been here, every year there's a huge $1 million plus budget amendment related to the road treatment program. What's the bid process initially? I mean, are these jobs bid separately, or are they bid
No, it's
totality?
the road treatment program is bid by itself as a project.
Okay.
All the projects are, it's all the same type work.
Okay, so it's all bundled
It's
together?
all bundled together, correct.
So for each one of these, are these going over because of construction, materials cost, or?
The main one we're looking at probably is the
Aaron Road?
Barron Road, which was a large project over about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And the main reason there's such a big surplus in that project is because the opposite of the problem we're having right now is that oil prices were going down, and it cost less than we originally estimated. And now the problem is exact opposite. We make these budgets a long time ago, and price of oil's gone up about 60%, and that's the main ingredient of the material costs in the road treatment project. It's asphalt.
Oh, okay. So these are not completed in a budget year, they're over a period of time?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yeah. We do our budgets back in probably May, and our budget doesn't get passed till June, till we get out.
I guess the question is, Commissioner Lynch is asking, it may take a year or two to do a project on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe roads take 5 to 10 years to get done.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the road and what we have to do to get it done.
Oh, okay.
So it could be a long period of time to get it done.
Long period of time.
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
It can stay open 3 years
Right.
to the first activity.
So the budget amendment then comes as the job is completed?
No.
As we go into the next phase of the work.
Okay. But these are completed, right?
These are all completed.
Who monitors that? I
Mr.
guess the
Ward.
overages.
We do, Ken Ward does.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
All right, we'll vote to advance this item to page's agenda. Okay, that passes. Next item, please.
Ordinance number 5088 to amend the budget of estimate revenues and expenditures for the Riverboat Fund in the amount of $30,000 for Get Up Incorporated for its C.C. Antoine
project for the year 2011.
Mr. Cox?
We'd like to pull this and send it to the NGO committee, please.
At your next meeting, I believe,
Ms. Lynch, don't you have a Thursday?
Thursday at 2.
and we're going to address this in 2 weeks. Second. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Cox and seconded by Mr. Pearson that this item be pulled and sent to the NGO committee. We'll move this forward to Thursday.
That's to pull it.
I'm sorry, to pull it.
It doesn't have to be moved to Thursday.
Right, yeah, it'll be pulled. It's removed from the agenda. Okay, that passes. Next order, please.
Ordinance number 5089 to amend chapter 38 of the Caddo Parish Code of Ordinances to enact section 38-4 regarding the Shreveport Caddo 2030 master plan.
Move to Thursday.
Second. Moved by Mr. Pearson, seconded by Mr. Cox. To advance this item to Thursday's agenda on the discussion, we have Mr. Thibodeau and Mr. Lynch. So first of all, the maker and second of the motion, would you like any comments?
No, not right now.
Okay, I'm good. Mr. Pardon? I'm good. Okay. Mr. Thibodeau?
I can endeavor 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Thibodeau, seconded by Mr. Dominique, that we engrow items number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, any discussion? We have Ms. Lynch, you have some discussion on?
Yeah, I just wanted to register my concern about the ordinance, passing an ordinance to adopt the master plan in the form that it currently is. Of course, I've just had a chance to glance at how we structured it, but and I'm passing out, and I've registered that concern in an email to my colleagues and to the administration and to our attorney. And the handout is just a copy of what Attorney Grubb sent to us, and just those highlighted portions that I kind of outlined in the email. I think it's a slippery slope. I think that we are broadly construing our charter to adopt it by ordinance. I have no problem with the resolution, adopting it by resolution, but the ordinance adds an extra burden, I think, to the commission that concerns me. And so I just want to reiterate that and give you a hard copy of the highlighted portions that concern me. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, we'll vote on it and go on these items to Thursday's agenda. Okay.
Next, we have authorized appointment of Mr. Herbert Rogers Jr. to the North Shreveport Industrial Park Supervisory Board. To replace Mr. Jerry Thomas.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Bowman to advance this item to Thursday's agenda. Any discussion? If not, let's vote please to advance to Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry. One moment, Mr. Thibodeau has an announcement.
Just want to remind those persons on the constable's salary study committee that we'll be meeting right after this meeting, we'll meet in here. And the purpose of the meeting is to, the members are Deb, Dominic, John Escobedo, Linda Johnson, Jim Smith, and Ken Evans.
All right, Mr. Pearson?
Move to adjourn. Mute your mic.
Stephanie, are you? That's